Have you ever wondered how Jesus Christ looked or how he was perceived during his time? Today, we delve into an intriguing letter from Pontius Pilate to Tiberius Caesar. This letter takes us back to the era when Rome ruled the world and Jesus was just beginning to make his mark. In the bustling province of Galilee, a young man started preaching a new law in the name of the God who had sent him. Pontius Pilate, the man in charge, was initially worried. He feared this man, Jesus of Nazareth, was stirring up the people against the Romans. But these fears quickly faded. As Pilate observed Jesus, he found him speaking more as a friend of the Romans than of the Jews. There stood Jesus, leaning against a tree, calmly addressing the multitude. He was different, very different from the people that surrounded him. His golden hair, his beard, they gave him a celestial aspect. He appeared to be about 30 years of age. His face was the epitome of serenity, a sweet countenance that was a stark contrast to his listeners with their black beards and tawny complexions. Pilate didn't want to interrupt this man who was captivating the crowd. Instead, he instructed his secretary to join the group and listen to Jesus' teachings. The report he received was enlightening. The teachings of Jesus surpassed those of all philosophers. He was neither seditious nor rebellious, and so the Romans extended their protection to him. He was free to act, to speak, to assemble, and to address the people. This freedom, however, was not well received by all. It provoked the Jews, not the poor, but the rich and powerful. Intriguing, isn't it? This unusual man was attracting attention and causing a stir, not by rebellion, but by his mere presence and teachings. As Pilate's secretary observed Jesus, a fascinating picture of his teachings emerged. In the midst of a crowd, leaning against a tree, Jesus spoke with a calm and humble voice. His words were not of rebellion or sedition, but rather of peace and understanding. His teachings were different from all the philosophers of his time. They were not complex treatises or intricate theories, but simple truths that resonated with the hearts of those listening. Jesus spoke of a new law, a law not of man but of a higher being, the God who had sent him. His teachings were filled with compassion, love and forgiveness. They were about treating others as you would wish to be treated, about loving your neighbor as yourself. They were about seeking and offering forgiveness and about leading a life of humility and service. Unlike the philosophers who often spoke in abstract terms, Jesus' teachings were practical and straightforward. They were applicable in everyday life. They were about the here and now, not just the afterlife or some distant future. They were about personal transformation and making the world a better place. Despite the simplicity of his teachings, they were profound and revolutionary. They challenged the prevailing norms and traditions. They questioned the authority and practices of the religious leaders of the time. Jesus was given the freedom to act, to speak, to assemble, and to address the people. This freedom was not a license for anarchy or chaos, but a platform for dialogue and understanding. It was an opportunity to share his message of love and peace with the world. Yet, with such freedom, it wasn't the poor who were provoked, but the rich and powerful. Perhaps it was because his teachings threatened their authority and status. Perhaps it was because they were unable to understand or accept his message. Or perhaps it was simply because they were afraid of change. A stirring thought, isn't it? Now let's delve into the most intriguing part: Pilate's interview with Jesus. The scene unfolds at the Praetorium, where Pilate, the Roman governor, had invited Jesus for a conversation. As Jesus made his entrance, Pilate was taking his morning walk. The sight of Jesus, however, stopped Pilate in his tracks. His feet, as he described, seemed as though they were fastened with an iron hand to the marble pavement. He trembled in every limb, not out of fear or disgust, but rather a sense of awe and reverence. This wasn't your typical interview. There were no pointed questions, no interrogation. Instead, there was an exchange of energy, a silent conversation that left an indelible mark on Pilate. He stood there, admiring this extraordinary man, taking in every detail. There was a magnetic simplicity about Jesus, a quality that drew Pilate in. His personality, so elevated, so unique, that it surpassed the philosophers and teachers of his day. What was it about Jesus that left such a profound impact on Pilate? Was it his serene demeanor, his celestial aspect, or his golden-colored hair and beard that contrasted so starkly against the tawny complexions and black beards of his bearers? Or was it his teachings, the ones that had already stirred the air with their radical wisdom? Perhaps it was a combination of all these elements that created this aura of divinity around Jesus. Pilate was moved. He was moved by the presence of a man who was neither seditious nor rebellious, a man who spoke as a friend of the Romans rather than an enemy. He was moved by the teachings of a man who had the power to captivate a multitude with his words, a man who was given unlimited freedom to act, to speak, to assemble, and to address the people. He was moved by the calmness, the tranquility, the serenity that Jesus exuded. An extraordinary man indeed, but the story doesn't end here, or it doesn't end. Scene script. Pilate goes on to talk about the miraculous abilities of Jesus. In his letter, Pilate marvels at the extraordinary feats attributed to Jesus. He mentions them not as myths or allegories, but as factual occurrences that he himself had witnessed or verified. The first of these notable miracles was the transformation of water into wine. This was not a mere trick or illusion, but a profound alteration of nature, a testament to an authority over the very elements. Yet the miracles did not stop there. Pilate speaks of a power over life and death itself. He narrates how Jesus could bring the dead back to life, defying the ultimate boundary that separates the mortal from the divine. This was a power that transcended the understanding of the Romans and the Jews alike, challenging their perceptions of reality. Pilate also recounts the healing abilities of Jesus. With a word or a touch, ailments and diseases were said to be cured. The blind could see, the lame could walk, and the sick were restored to health. These acts of healing were not just about restoring physical wellness. They reflected a deep compassion for the suffering and a desire to alleviate pain and hardship. Finally, Pilate speaks about the calming of stormy seas. This miracle showcased a command over the forces of nature. When tempests raged and waves threatened, the words of Jesus brought peace and tranquility. This was a demonstration of power, not for the sake of grandeur, but for the protection and safety of those in peril. These were not random acts or coincidences. They were deliberate displays of a power that was beyond human comprehension, a power that could defy nature, reverse death, heal the sick, and command the elements. These were no ordinary feats. It led Pilate to a profound conclusion. From an apprehensive observer to a convinced believer, Pilate's perception of Jesus underwent a significant change. The Roman governor, initially wary of Jesus' influence, soon found himself captivated by the Nazarene's teachings and character. His observations led him to a profound realization, one that echoed through the corridors of time and resonates with millions to this day. Pilate's final thoughts on Jesus were far from his initial skepticism. He found himself in awe of the man who stood before him, a man of simplicity, yet possessing a magnetic personality that outshone the philosophers and teachers of his day. Pilate saw in Jesus a man of peace, not a seditious rebel stirring up trouble, but a compassionate figure who extended love and understanding to all, regardless of their status. Most strikingly, Pilate recognized Jesus' extraordinary abilities. He recounted the miracles he had heard of, turning water into wine, raising the dead, healing the sick, calming stormy seas. These were not the deeds of an ordinary man, but the works of someone with a divine connection. Pilate found himself unable to deny the evidence presented to him. This led to his bold declaration, one that would be remembered and quoted for centuries to come. Pilate proclaimed Jesus as the Son of God, an affirmation that held significant weight coming from a Roman governor. He insisted that Jesus was not guilty of any criminal offense, a statement that stood in stark contrast to the accusations of the rich and powerful Jews of the time. This declaration was not made lightly. It was a testament to Jesus' impact on Pilate, a Roman authority who had initially viewed him with suspicion. Pilate's transformation from doubt to belief encapsulates the profound influence Jesus had on those he encountered. And so we hear it from the pen of a Roman governor, a man well versed in judgment and authority, a man who had no personal stake in the religious debates of the time, a declaration that carries with it a weight of authenticity, a testament to the person Jesus was and the life he led, a declaration from a Roman governor that truly Jesus was the Son of God. Alongside Pilate's account, there's another description of Jesus by Publius Lentulus, a citizen of Judea. In the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Lentulus penned a vivid account of Jesus Christ, capturing not just his physical features but also the aura he exuded. Lentulus described Jesus as a man of singular virtue, esteemed as a prophet by some and revered as a divine entity by others. In terms of appearance, Lentulus painted Jesus as a tall, well-shaped man. His amiable and reverent aspect was accentuated by hair of a colour that could hardly be matched. It gracefully curled and fell onto his shoulders, parting on the crown of his head, reminiscent of the Nazarite style. This detail, while subtle, speaks volumes about the meticulousness of Lentulus' observation and the uniqueness of Jesus' appearance. Jesus' forehead was described as high, large, and imposing, a testament to his intellectual prowess and wisdom. His cheeks were flawless, without spot or wrinkle, and bore a lovely red hue, a symbol of health and vitality. His nose and mouth, while not elaborated upon, were undoubtedly part of a countenance that exuded an extraordinary charm. But it was not just the physical attributes that caught Lentulus' attention. He emphasized Jesus' ability to heal all sorts of diseases with a mere word or touch, and his power to recall the dead from their graves. These miraculous acts reinforced the divine image of Jesus, making him an entity to be loved and adored. This description by Lentulus, though written centuries ago, brings Jesus Christ to life in our minds. It paints a picture of a man who was not just extraordinary in appearance, but also in deeds and virtues. It reinforces the image of Jesus as a figure of immense spiritual strength and divine power. A man of singular virtue, a prophet to some, a god to others. This was Jesus Christ in the eyes of his contemporaries. So, what can we gather from these accounts? Well, we've journeyed through a series of enlightening perspectives, tracing the footsteps of a figure who has left an indelible mark on human history, Jesus of Nazareth. We've glimpsed into his teachings, his miracles, his persona, and the profound impact he had on those around him, as narrated through the eyes of Pontius Pilate and Publius Lentulus. From the intriguing encounter where Pilate first laid eyes on Jesus, we learn about the captivating aura that surrounded him. His serene countenance, golden hair, and teachings that stirred hearts and minds set him apart from the crowd. He wasn't just another voice in the wilderness. He was a beacon of hope and wisdom, radiating love and humility. His teachings, as described by Pilate's secretary, were unlike anything they had encountered before. They weren't inflammatory or rebellious. Instead, they were filled with wisdom that surpassed even the most learned philosophers of the day. The teachings of Jesus were a testament to his unique insight and understanding of life and humanity. The miracles of Jesus, as accounted by Pilate, were extraordinary feats that defied the laws of nature. From turning water into wine to resurrecting the dead, these acts were not just demonstrations of divine power, but they were also a reflection of his compassion and love for mankind. Through Pilate's interview with Jesus, we see a glimpse of the magnetic simplicity of his persona that elevated him above the philosophers and teachers of his day. It wasn't just his wisdom or his miracles, but his character and his very presence that left Pilate in awe. The description of Jesus by Publius Lentulus paints a vivid picture of his physical appearance. His tall stature, his beautiful hair, and his commanding yet gentle presence added to the enigma that was Jesus of Nazareth. These first-hand accounts, penned down centuries ago, provide us with invaluable insights into the life and teachings of Jesus. They help us understand why he continues to be revered by billions around the world. His message of love, humility, and sacrifice transcends time and continues to resonate with people across generations. In conclusion, these accounts not only give us a glimpse into the life of Jesus, but also highlight the profound impact he had on those around him. His teachings and miracles, his persona, and his extraordinary deeds have left a lasting legacy that continues to shape our world even today. Whether you're a believer or not, these accounts provide a fascinating insight into one of the most influential figures in human history, Jesus Christ.